Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm just gonna sort of have a quick discussion here on growing orchids, and we're going to focus mainly on the Dracula varieties, but I'll give you a few hints and tips for all cool growing orchids. So what we're looking at here is the back end of my greenhouse with my Dracula setup. My Draculas, a lot of them bloom 12 months out of the year, and some of them are seasonal bloomers, so we have a few seasonal bloomers in bloom at the moment as well. And we might as well get right into it here. So what is this guy? This one is the Dracula Hera Suta. So this one is a seasonal bloomer. It blooms for me once a year with probably 6 or 8 spikes. It's a good size orchid, probably 6 inches across. Turning a little bit over here, this is Dracula Bella. Now this one blooms all year long for me. Some blooms are bigger than others. Some blooms last for a little bit longer than others. You can see a seed pod right here. You can see 1, 2, 3 more blooms on there. Plus all of these hanging down are old blooms that are just spent, as well as there's probably some new spikes in there as well. That one is a constant bloomer for me. So that's the plant up here. This is an Ontoglossidium. That's a tiger crow. It's in bloom as well. It takes cool, moist temperatures or conditions. Let's see if I can swing this one here. There is a Dracula Vampire. So this is one of my favorite orchids. Excuse me. And it is always in bloom. It's from a plant that's way back here. Let me see if we can see it here. This with the spike going this way, that's another vampire spike. The plant's actually at the back, but it's always in bloom, always in spike. We'll focus back down here, and the fog just turned on, so that's going to make things a little difficult. There's another vampire bud. Here is a vampire seed pod. And so, since the fog is turned on, we might as well talk about that. One thing that makes my grow setup here quite unique is it is climate controlled, humidity controlled. So the fog comes on. At this point, it's set to 95%. So if it drops below 95%, the fog comes on. Keeps all of these guys bathed in fog, especially in the warmer weather. When the sun comes out, it's nice and bright on this end, but the humidity is always high from this fog that's blowing out from, coincidentally, underneath the Dracula setup. Humidity for these guys needs to be high, extremely high. Let me see here, there's another little tiny white one here. There's lots in spike and in bloom. So for growing these cool growing guys, now that we've seen them all, I'll show you one more up here. This is a Dracula Chimera. So that's bloomed for me many times. It seems to be doing really well as well. It's one of my newest Draculas. I do grow them under lights, so that's why it's so bright up there. You're staring at the light right now. It has 2 fluorescent lights tubes up there. I take them away for the brightest part of the summertime, but I put them back in for the fall and the winter. Because it's in the shady part of the greenhouse, I'd rather control the light that these guys are under and have them growing under some artificial lights that don't throw off too much heat than have them on the direct sunny side. But these guys actually take more light than you would think in order to get them to bloom prolifically anyways. Here's another one down here. This is a Dracula as well. This is a Dracula Soterio. And what else can I tell you here? As for temperatures, these are cool growing orchids. They come from high elevations in cloud forests. So we've definitely got to the cloud forest part covered. Now, they can take a warmer daytime temperature. These guys get into the low 80s in the daytime, but there is a drastic cool down at night, and they always cool down into the 50s. And that, I think, is what's key to growing the cool growing orchids, is not so much what the daytime temperature is, as long as the humidity is high. It's what the nighttime temperature is. So when we are growing these cool growing orchids, and the daytime temperature is high in the greenhouse, generally what happens is the relative humidity also drops as the temperature goes up, where I compensate for that with all this fog that's being created. So it's not unusual to have an 85-degree day in the greenhouse and have 85 or 90% humidity as well. I think if it was an 85-degree day and it had 25% humidity, these guys would not be growing as happy as they are. So we talked a little bit about the light, we talked a little bit about the temperature. As for watering them, I water them 3 or 4 times a week. I make sure they never dry out. As you can see from all the baskets here, they are covered in moss. There's moss growing out the sides of the baskets. There's moss growing out the top of the baskets. And that's because the baskets are never allowed to fully dry out. If they do fully dry out, then we're going to really have a setback for that particular plant as well. So humidity's high, media is always moist. I do fertilize them. I've actually upped the fertilization a little bit in some of them. I was always fertilizing very, very weakly with it, but some of these guys that are blooming non-stop, like the Vampire here, the flowers I'm finding are actually getting smaller. Now, I do have a couple seed pods on this plant. The plant has 5 spikes right now. There's sequential blooming as well, so that means that the 5 spikes are continuously putting out blooms. It's really sucking out the energy from the plant. But at this point, I don't have the heart to cut off the good spikes, even though the flowers are getting a little bit smaller. So yeah. Anyways, I think for closing words, the cool growing orchids can take warmer temperatures and brighter lights as long as the humidity is high, but they need that drop in temperature at night. If you're trying to grow them inside in a terrarium and your temperature at night is only going down into the mid-60s, I think you guys are going to have trouble. So the idea is to get them down into the mid-50s anyways. The nice thing about them is if they're in a greenhouse, you don't have to heat the greenhouse too much. These guys could easily take a 45-degree night with no trouble whatsoever. In the wintertime, the odd night has got down to about 50 degrees in here, and they are just fine. So anyways, guys, that is a few tips and tricks for growing cool growing orchids, specifically Dracula orchids. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you can see in this video with the fog turning on here. That was purely accidental. I turned off all the fans to start the filming process, but left the fogger on, although it was in the off position when I started filming. So, if you like this video and you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. As always, thanks for watching.